The Nashville City Council voted 26-12 to hand over $1.26 billion in public bonds for a stadium the Titans will control for the next 30 years. The week that deal closed, the team's franchise value jumped $900 million. Taxpayers got zero equity, zero revenue share, zero cut of the naming rights, just the bill. So here's the question worth asking. If 50 years of economic research proves stadiums don't pay off for cities, why do they keep writing the checks? The stadium subsidy game has a structure, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It goes like this. The team hints at relocation, the city panics, a consultant drops an economic impact study with a number that sounds like a miracle, politicians schedule a ribbon cutting, and then the math quietly disappears into a 30-year bond document nobody reads until it's too late. What's different right now is the speed. 3 active NFL deals show the pattern isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. Buffalo committed $850 million in public funds for the Bills' new stadium. The project was originally pitched at $1.4 billion total. The final cost is now tracking at $2.10 to $2.2 billion. That gap didn't happen by accident. Nashville approved $1.26 billion in public bonds for the Titans, the largest direct public stadium subsidy in U.S. history at the time the deal was signed. Then in December 2025, Kansas approved $1.8 billion in public funding for a new Chiefs stadium, 60% of a $3 billion project. 3 deals, 3 different cities, 1 identical pitch deck. Every single one was sold on jobs, tourism, and civic pride. None of it holds up against the bond documents, and none of it is meant to, because the bond documents come after the vote. To cut through the PR, we're going to run what I call the CEO scorecard. 4 metrics that strip out the press conference language and show you what cities actually agreed to. And stay tuned, because the most counterintuitive finding isn't the upfront cost. It's where the money goes after the ribbon gets cut. Metric 1, true taxpayer exposure. When Nashville officials announced the Titans deal, they led with $1.26 billion. That number is real. It's also incomplete. Pull the Ms. RB/Emma bond filings, the actual documents the city signed, and you find roughly $1.1 billion in interest payments sitting on top of that principal over the life of the bonds. The real number is $2.3 billion in total taxpayer exposure on a $2.1 billion stadium. The city is paying more than the building costs, and that math is right there in the public record. It's not interpretation, it's arithmetic. Buffalo is the same story told louder. The Bills deal was introduced to the public as a $1.4 billion project with $850 million in public support. Construction costs pushed the total to $2.10 to $2.2 billion before a single game was played. The Chiefs deal in Kansas takes it further, $1.8 billion in public funds, structured through star bonds and a new dedicated fund covering 60% of a $3 billion stadium. Every new deal sets a higher floor than the last one. Metric 2, revenue share back to taxpayers. Here's where the deal structure gets deliberately confusing. Cities often end up owning the building, at least on paper. Nashville's metro government holds title to the new stadium. What it doesn't hold is any meaningful claim to what happens inside it. Teams in these deals typically keep more than 90% of game day revenue, naming rights income, and personal seat license sales. The Titans are projecting around $350 million in PSL sales from the new stadium. That money goes straight to the team and the NFL. Not a dollar of it flows back to the public as a revenue offset against the bonds. Cities own the walls. Teams own everything the walls contain. Metric 3, opportunity cost and the job creation lie. The Bills Stadium cost $850 million in public funds. That building hosts roughly 10 regular season home games a year. Think about what that capital could do deployed somewhere else. Infrastructure studies consistently show every dollar in highway or transit investment generates between $1.50 and $2 in economic activity through multipliers. Stadiums generate close to zero net new activity because economists at Brookings, the St. Louis Fed, and the Journal of Benefit Cost Analysis have confirmed the same finding across more than 50 independent studies. Fans who spend money at the stadium aren't creating new economic output. They're redirecting money they would have spent at a restaurant, a bar, or a movie theater somewhere else in the same city. The spending shifts, it doesn't grow. The job creation argument is where this gets dishonest. Construction jobs are temporary, typically 2 to 3 years at most. Stadium operations jobs, concessions, ushers, parking attendants are part-time and seasonal. The teams know this. The consultants writing the impact studies know this too, which is why those studies use multiplier assumptions that independent economists have repeatedly rejected in peer-reviewed literature. The numbers in the pitch deck are built to survive a press conference, not a dissertation. Metric 4, land value transfer. This is the metric that rarely makes the headline, and it might be the most costly one. New stadium projects almost always involve prime real estate, riverfront parcels, downtown adjacent land, sites with decades of development potential. Cities hand that land over at below market terms as part of the stadium package because the stadium itself requires the surrounding acreage to function. The team controls the asset. The franchise value compounds. The Titans' ownership saw their valuation jump $900 million the week the Nashville deal closed, not after the stadium opened, the week the deal was signed. That's the market pricing and what the subsidy is worth to the owner. Meanwhile, the city holds the debt. The gap between what the owner gained and what the public gained doesn't close over time. It widens. Franchise values in the NFL have risen at roughly 12% annually over the last decade. Public bonds don't appreciate. They just come due. 4 metrics. Each one shows the same transfer in a different direction. Capital flows out of the public balance sheet and into the private one, and the deal is structured so that process is nearly impossible to see until it's already done. The research isn't hidden. Economists have been publishing the same conclusions since the 1990s. City finance offices have analysts. Bond counsel charges hundreds of dollars an hour. Everyone in the room when these deals get signed understands what the numbers say. So this isn't a story about ignorance. It's a story about incentives. The relocation threat is the master lever. It doesn't have to be credible to work. It just has to be plausible for long enough to get a vote scheduled. No mayor wants to be the person who lost the team. That's a career-ending headline in a sports-obsessed city, and owners know it. The threat gets raised quietly through intermediaries and conversations that don't get transcribed. By the time it reaches a city council chamber, the political damage of saying no already feels worse than the financial damage of saying yes. Teams also control the information environment going into the vote. The economic impact study lands first. It gets covered by local news as a data point rather than a commissioned document. The independent analysis, if it gets done at all, arrives later, with less fanfare, and by then the narrative is already set. Brookings doesn't hold a press conference, the team does. And then there's the timeline problem. The politicians who approve the bonds are almost never the ones cutting checks when the debt comes due. A 30-year bond approved in 2023 becomes someone else's budget problem in 2035. The ribbon cutting is this term. The bill is next generation's problem. That backwards incentive structure is a feature of the deal, not a bug. Nashville is the clearest example of how framing flips the math. The 1996 lease carried a real documented maintenance liability of $1.75 billion through 2039. The new deal eliminated that exposure, which gave the city cover to call a $2.3 billion total commitment fiscally responsible. Technically, they weren't lying, but the comparison was designed to make $2.3 billion feel like a discount. Owners have spent 50 years building a system where every pressure point pushes cities toward yes. The math is bad by design, buried by design, and approved on a timeline that makes accountability almost structurally impossible. Quick playbook before you go. Taxpayers. If the team says they're covering overruns, watch the final number. If maintenance isn't capped, you're exposed for decades. Always demand independent studies, not team-funded ones. Sports execs, the relocation threat opens the door. Controlling the impact narrative keeps it open, and retaining naming rights, PSLs, and land value locks in the upside. The math is designed to be invisible until after the vote. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to see it.